I just realized the other day that I have been officially a full-time freelancer for the past 6 months. It's kind of crazy. It doesn't feel like it's been a whole half a year since I left my full-time job. But that being said, I do feel like professionally so different than I was 6 months ago, both in terms of like what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, my strategy, as well as like kind of my goals for freelancing. So I want to share some of the like biggest things that I've learned over this past 6 months of being a full-time freelancer. I do want to preface though that this isn't my first 6 months freelancing ever. I've been doing some kind of stuff on the side since 2020, I think. I had like a little side hustle, and then I've been doing my current services. I was doing that on the side for a year before I went full-time freelance. So I'm not totally new to freelancing. So it's not like I'm learning all these foundational things, but being a full-time freelancer is a totally different beast than being a side hustler. So there's definitely been some wake-up calls, some things I wasn't expecting. And I just going to share that with you. There's a lot of these things, even as someone who did do things on the side before, I think would be really helpful for people to know if they are looking to start freelancing or are like new to freelancing. Definitely have lots of tips and kind of wake up calls for you. So one of the main things that I've definitely learned a lot over the last 6 months is that freedom can be kind of hard to handle. I know that freedom is definitely the number one thing that most people look forward to when they start freelancing. If you're in a full-time job, you have your certain role that you might be able to take on a little different things here and there, but for the most part, your responsibilities are pretty set in stone. Whereas if you're a freelancer, like you have the freedom to kind of change what you're doing anytime you want. There's no one really telling you what to do on a day-to-day basis. So it can be fun and kind of exciting, but at the same time, because you can do anything, like you can do anything. So it makes it kind of hard to focus in on what it is exactly that you want to do. So like I started my services being more marketing, content marketing stuff. And then I've realized as I've kind of dug into all these different hobbies that I've had that I like doing a lot of other things like project management, and I like doing more of the production side rather than like the execution side. So I feel like I have all of these different things that I can explore, but you have to kind of choose what you do want to explore. And I just didn't anticipate that freedom being so, I wouldn't say totally overwhelming, but it can definitely be overwhelming at times that you feel like you can do everything. So what is it that you should be actually focusing on? The next thing is I have definitely learned the importance of setting a schedule and boundaries. Again, this is one of the things that I feel like people, or kind of the opposite of this, is what people look forward to when they're freelancing, that they don't have to be online from 9 to 5 every day. And it is nice to give me that flexibility where I can do some more things during the day. I can travel and not have to worry about requesting off or anything, but it can be a bit of a trap that like on a Tuesday, I'm like, oh, I can do something in the middle of the day today. And then something on Thursday pops up and I do something in the middle of the day. And then all of a sudden I find that I'm like having a teeny tiny time frame before my deadlines pop up because I didn't plan my time well. So I don't think you necessarily have to have like a strict schedule that like I'm going to work from 9 to 5 every day, or I'm going to work from, if you want to work later, like 12 to 8, whatever. I don't think it has to be that strict, but I think some sort of consistency is helpful. I've tried it in both ways where I'm just like, I'm just going to work when I'm motivated to work, but that can be a little bit chaotic. So I think it's important to like set some kind of a schedule and like loosely adhere to it most of the time. Give yourself breaks. Obviously, you're a freelancer, so you want to enjoy the freedom of doing something in the middle of a weekday, but definitely some kind of schedule is helpful there. But I think another kind of on the opposite side of setting a schedule is boundaries about when you do and don't work is really important. It's super easy, especially as you're building your own business. You're trying to, if you're a service-based business, you're working on building your own brand and kind of doing your internal marketing and everything and all of your internal procedures, as well as doing client work. It can be so easy to work 7 days a week. There are several days where I'll start working at like 9 a.m. or something, and then I'll work until like 11 p.m. And that's just not good. Every once in a while, it's okay to do that, but it's really important to not get in the habit of doing that all the time. It's something that I've had to actively be like, okay, on these days, on like these 3 days a week, I'm going to make sure I don't work past 6 o'clock. Or if I have my checklist of things to do, not trying to work into the next day's checklist, because that is like one of the easiest ways to go towards burnout. I think freelancers are very predisposed to burning out because the more you work, the more money you make. So there's a huge incentive to work all the time. Kind of hand in hand with that is the importance of like prioritization. There are always like a million things that you can be doing, and something can pop up at any minute. And I think that I initially, when I started getting more client work, something would pop up and I would just do it right away. But that's not very scalable. Like, that's only sustainable for a certain amount of time. And at some point, that's just going to make things fall through the cracks. It's going to stress you out. I think like having a clear structure for how you prioritize what work you're going to do when is kind of the only way that you can sustainably scale things. I think that's why I love doing weekly planning. And I will make sure I have all of my tasks at the beginning of the week that I need to get done for the week. I'll have those laid out either on like Sunday night or Monday morning, and I distribute those throughout the week. So I know that all of these things I need to get done, I have them all slotted out. I know when I'm going to do them, and then leave a little bit of wiggle room for if new things pop up. And then also like scheduling days where you are going to dedicate it just to all of your internal marketing stuff, so you don't feel like you have to like fit it in between all of these tasks. So I think without that, if you're not a planner, you're probably going to have to change that if you're a freelancer, because managing your own time and your own tasks is probably the hardest thing that you have to do as a freelancer. And kind of like in line with that, I think that it's been really fun for me, but also really necessary, is learning how to be like the most efficient at what you're doing, whether that's planning things around when you're in the zone. If you are just not feeling it, don't try to push through any creative tasks or anything that requires a ton of like really deep focus and effort. Maybe on those times, like have a list of all of this admin stuff that's just kind of like checking off boxes. Have that stuff you can work on. So I think knowing when you're in certain types of flows and leaning into that. One really, really big one that I didn't fully anticipate how much freelancing would affect this is that your confidence is so affected by freelancing, both in positive and negative ways. I think that freelancing really, really tests your confidence. Everyone knows that things are a little bit more unstable, obviously, if you're a freelancer compared to like having a consistent paycheck coming in. And you have to work super, super hard to get every single piece of work, or every client that you get. You have to work super, super hard. And there are just going to be some times when things are going to be a little bit slower. There are going to be times when you're getting rejected. There are going to be times when you are really proud of something that you turn into a client and you get tons of bad feedback on that and they're just really not happy with it. There's all of these different things that can affect your confidence in a really negative way. I think that when you're a freelancer, your personal brand and your business is like such a big part of you. Like, there's not really separation as much as there is when you're working for a company and you're just an employee there. You still feel like more of an individual. As a freelancer, the two are just so tightly intertwined that it can be super, super hard if you're struggling in the business to not feel like you're struggling personally. But on the flip side too, because of how tightly these are intertwined, when you're doing great in business, it can be such a big confidence builder too. Like on the months where I'm just getting lots of good feedback, I am getting new clients steadily, I'm feeling like I'm in my zone, I'm really like mastering what I'm doing, I'm feeling passionate about what I'm doing. In those moments, your confidence can get built up so much. So I think the highs like feel really, really good, but it makes the lows feel kind of even worse because of like that comparison. So I think that's just something to look out for when you are freelancing, is expecting that and using different strategies to make sure that when things aren't going so well, that it's not going to be such a massive blow to your confidence. And I think just like having as much separation as you can, and the boundaries that I talked about earlier, setting boundaries about when you can and can't work on stuff will definitely help with confidence. So it's like, I'm taking today off and I'm going to just work out and like have fun, and realizing that like you can be really strong in the gym even if you were kind of like weak at work during the day, or you go out with your friends and have fun and realize that you are a great friend and you are a lot of fun. Just because you struggled at work doesn't mean that is an indicator of who you are as a whole person. It can be really hard to lose that perspective, I think. I don't think I've ever fully lost it to where I have been 100% dependent on my professional life for my confidence, but there are times, especially in really hard weeks, that I feel like I can feel myself starting to lose perspective, and I have to actively try to be like, get it together. Your business isn't everything, and you have a lot of other great values, even if things aren't going well. And that's another thing that I've realized, that things can just change so quickly. There are so many times when like I have panic applied to other jobs. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting the clients I want. I feel like I'm not doing the work that I want to be doing right now. I feel like it was not a good idea to continue just freelancing instead of trying to find another full-time job. But then a couple weeks later, I will get a new client, or I'll discover something about how I want to change my services that I'm really excited about. So definitely take some grit and kind of like faith in yourself and in your career that things will work out. And I don't know, like I did have a moment where I got an opportunity to interview for my dream job. Like this was my absolute number one company that it's been my dream company for years. And I got to the final stage of the interview process. It was just me and one other person, that if I did get that job, I would have been happy at that job and like leaving freelancing. But I realized during that experience that there was actually part of me that was really relieved if I didn't get it. One, because I'd have to move to San Francisco and I love it in LA, so I know I would have missed LA. But also I was like, I think I would have mourned kind of freelancing a little bit, that it's almost kind of like you don't know what you have until it's gone. As soon as I realized that I might lose this freedom and building my own career and my ability to lean into my own personal brand for my career, once the prospect of that going away was like real, I realized that I actually would have really, really missed it. So I think it was kind of like a wake-up call for me. So I feel like I have been tested over and over and over again with my freelancing experience. But overall, like throughout this first 6 months, I think I've built a lot of confidence. I've learned a lot about what to do, what not to do, when to just chill the fuck out and trust the process. Another thing that I have learned too, one last thing that I'll kind of wrap this up on, as a freelance like service provider, I realized that especially if you're in like a more creative kind of role, that trading your time for money, just always doing an hourly rate, I don't think is sustainable in the long term, especially since like a lot of the clients that I've gotten the most are writing clients. And if I were working 40 hours a week, I would be making enough money for me to live, but I just truly can't write for 40 hours a week. So I've noticed like to know your limits, and then to realize where things might not be sustainable in the long term. So I have definitely pivoted to be like, yeah, I'm going to either have to bump up that rate or diversify what I'm doing in order to keep doing this for the long term. And I think something that I've realized is I definitely want to start offering more like products in addition to services, just so I'm not so dependent on directly trading my time for money, especially if I'm doing a lot of work that is pretty intensive. And I just truly, like, if I were to write 40 hours a week, I would lose my absolute mind. So just something to look out for if you are trying to do like service-based freelancing, that can be a little bit tough. Just make sure you're pricing it right if you do want to do that service as your full-time thing. That's all I have to say about this. Maybe I'll make another one when I've been freelancing for a year. I feel like I know there's so much more that I have to learn that I'm currently in the midst of learning. So I will definitely have more to say if I do this. If I do this again at the year mark. There's like pots and pans in my trunk that I forgot were in there, and they just totally like clang together. But anyway, thanks for this little drive and chat with me. Bye.